Hi guys, welcome, and who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. And today we are going to take a look at the NFC South draft classes for this past draft. And we're going to look at the players that our arch rival nemesis teams have drafted. And we're going to take a look at the players that the Saints will have to play against for the foreseeable future. I did this last year. I'll do this every year after the draft. We all break down the Saints draft class, and it's great. We all get to dream and a little dream. Maybe these players can bring us over the edge, take us over the top. But we have three other teams in our division who had a draft as well. And I like to look at who those guys got. I'm pretty deep into the draft, leading up to the draft, and so it seems like every year there are players that I really want for the Saints, and then I watch our rivals draft them one by one. Well, let's start off with our biggest rival, the Atlanta Dirty Bird Falcons. This is their draft class. They picked five players. They draft Jalen Walker, the edge out of Georgia, with the 15th overall pick. He was a player that was on the board when the Saints picked at 9. He was one of the three that I wanted. When our pick came up at 9, I kind of wanted to trade back. And I thought we really had a choice between Tyler Warren, the tight end, or Jalen Walker, the edge rusher, or Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle. Now, that was my final three when the Saints pick came up, or trade down. We didn't trade down. We selected Kelvin Banks. I think it's a fine pick because the offensive line is so top heavy in most drafts. And I thought that edge was a really deep position in this draft. So Atlanta thought it was so deep that they traded back up into the first round, picked 26 overall to get edge rusher James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. Now, James Pierce Jr., in my opinion, probably had a top 5, top 10 grade. He might have been in, a, the same spot as Jalen Walker, a top 10 prospect. If you want an edge rusher and you don't get Abdul Carter in this draft, these are two that are right at the top of the list. Jalen Walker, James Pierce Jr. So the Falcons traded away a first round pick next year and their second round pick this year so they can move back into the first round. A lot of people think it's a crazy move. The way I look at it is if you think the talent is so good, you go ahead and move up from the second round to the first round. It's like a pick swap. How good is the player? Well, you give up a first round pick next year. So in Atlanta's mind, James Pierce Jr. is one of those talents that would be justified as a first round pick next year. So they had issues at edge and they double dipped. Now, instead of having to block just Jalen Walker twice a year every year, we're going to have to find a way to block Walker and Pierce twice a year. So I think it's a pretty nice move by Atlanta. Now, if they were that close where they could give up future assets and just fill the biggest need and then be done with it, I don't think Atlanta's that close. I think they need more pieces than just two edge rushers. But you get two edge rushers, especially if they are productive, like they were in college. Yeah, you're going to have an identity on defense. Atlanta possibly goes from a bad pass rushing team off the edge to a couple of really talented players. They're eyeballing that same vision we all had thinking Cleveland might take Abdul Carter and then they would have Miles Garrett on one side and Abdul Carter on the other. Well, that's what Atlanta's doing. You got Walker on one side and Pierce on the other. Pick your poison. Who you going to help? You going to send help over to the second year player Fuanga? Or are you going to send help over to the other side? Whether it's a rookie or whether it's Trevor Penning. I think Atlanta made a decent move here. Their third round pick came at 96, and we drafted at 93 in the third round. That was our second third round pick, and we grabbed a safety in Jonas Sanka. And I like Jonas Sanka as a day three prospect, but I really loved Xavier Watts as a day two prospect. And we didn't take Watts, we took Sanker. Sanker's a around the line of scrimmage tackler kind of guy. Not quite sure he's going to do much deep. Watts is a guy that does a lot deep and is a ball hawk, but Watts doesn't provide you anything in the box. So Atlanta went the route of Watts, a deep safety expert who's going to be a ball hawk, and we're going to have to probably worry about Watts more than we had to worry about, that free agent they signed last year that passed us up to go to them. But then they double dip again in round four, pick 118, when they grab another safety, Billy Bowman. And Billy Bowman's one of those guys that I think he can do everything okay, but Atlanta seems to think if they solve the edge rush problem and their safety problem, then they're good to go because that's basically all they did. Their last pick in the seventh round, pick 218, they grabbed Jack Nelson, the offensive tackle out of Wisconsin. Nelson was a guy that I thought had a lot of potential. I thought he was definitely an offensive lineman on day three that you take a chance on because there's a lot to work with there. So I look at this draft class for Atlanta and I think, yeah, I would have liked all of those players for the Saints. I mocked Xavier Watts to the Saints probably 50 times. Jalen Walker a handful of times. James Pierce Jr., if he ever slipped into the second round, which he almost did in this draft, then I was grabbing James Pierce Jr. in the second round. And I mocked Jack Nelson to the Saints probably 100 times. If I got to a mock and I didn't address offensive line early, he was a primary day three target of mine. So overall, Atlanta makes the questionable move of trading a first round pick next year. But I look at James Pierce Jr. as a special talent. Maybe Atlanta feels the same. He's worth a first round pick next year. That would be an edge player they would go and get next year in the first round. So just go and get him this year. So overall, I don't grade these drafts. I mean, it doesn't matter. We'd grade them 4 years from now. But if Atlanta needed just to fix edge and safety, then I think they did all right. I think Atlanta has a few more holes than that. But you can't mass produce draft picks. You do what you can with them. And if the Saints are going to win this division this year or in the next 4 to 5 years, they're going to have to find a way to stop Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. And when they throw deep, they're going to have to make sure Watts ain't anywhere around. So that's what we got looking forward to with the Dirty Birds. The next team I'm going to highlight is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm saving the Panthers for last. Every single year since I've been focusing on the draft, the Panthers have had a draft class that, in my opinion, was just great. Now, they're not a very good team overall, so maybe those draft classes that look so good to me aren't really that good, but we'll see. We'll see. I really liked their class last year. But let's talk about Tampa first. Tampa Bay always has an okay draft. The Our division rivals, the way I look at it is I think Carolina drafts really good. I think Tampa Bay doesn't miss that much. And if they do, it's not big. And then Atlanta drafts okay, but when they miss big. When they make a move, they make a move that's eye popping and wow. So, and whether they hit or miss, like I said, you gotta give it 4 years. So Tampa Bay had all kinds of needs. One of the needs they really didn't have is wide receiver, but that's what they went with at pick 19 in the first round with wide receiver Emeka Igbuka out of Ohio State. Now, I liked Emeka Igbuka for the Saints, but because he wasn't the exact size profile I was looking for, I thought, okay, if this guy makes it to the second round, then yeah, you might have a need and a good player lined up in the second round, but you go ahead and grab Igbuka because he's too good of a player to pass at that point. He wasn't too good to pass up at pick 9, and we're not trading back up for him. Okay, but Tampa Bay decided he was way too good to pass up at 19. So maybe they feel like a couple of their wide receivers are going to be gone soon. I don't know. But I thought Tampa should have been focusing on edge. Thought Tampa had some issues in the secondary. They go ahead and address the secondary with their next two picks. The second round pick, pick 53, they grabbed cornerback Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. And then round 3, pick 84, they grabbed cornerback Jacob Parrish out of Kansas State. Yeah, I've mocked Benjamin Morrison to the Saints before in round 2 because I figured he would fall into round 2 and I figured he'd be worth taking a chance on the player in, a later round, not the first round, though he has first round talent. So Tampa must be content with the medicals on Benjamin Morrison. They take a chance on him, and yeah, they might have their starting cornerback of the future. Morrison's kind of small. He's coming off of a hip injury, so if the player can still move and play like he did in college, then yeah, Tampa's got a cornerback we need to worry about. And I thought when Tampa grabbed Tyreek Smith out of Georgia, I think that's his name, last year, he seemed to be an ideal nickelback. Come to find out, he can do that well, but he can play safety well as well. So when they grabbed Jacob Parrish in the third round, a really small cornerback who he really just projects to be a nickel in the league. Maybe that's their way of saying, no, we're putting Smith at safety now. So yeah, Tyreek Smith, whatever his name is, from Georgia last year. I liked him. I would have drafted him and put him at nickel, and I'd be keeping him at nickel. But Tampa has another vision for him. Parrish to me is only a nickel corner. He's too small, I think. So, but this is the vision for Tampa Bay. Their next pick in the fourth round, pick 121, is a guy that I absolutely love, David Walker, the edge out of Central Arkansas. Man, oh man, oh man. Not worth taking in the first 2 days. But yeah, you grab him in the fourth round or fifth round, and you've got a player to work with. Man. So Tampa doesn't get the edge early. They grab this wonder guy in the fourth round. It might be a brilliant move because that was kind of the route I wanted the Saints to go as far as edge rusher went. None of them were so good. You had to grab them on day 1. There's a bunch you could look at day 2. But if you address other positions and you don't address edge, this class was deep enough where you could grab some interesting prospects on day 3, and David Walker was at the top of my list for a fast outside edge presence to rush the passer. Tampa needed it, and then they got it. And they got a good one, and they got it late. So I also thought, as a Saints fan for the Saints, not only do we need a quick edge, we also needed a stout edge, a guy that can be flex on the line. And Tampa grabs that with Elijah Roberts in the fifth round, pick 157, the defensive end out of SMU, who I think can kick inside or outside. He's got just enough athleticism to play on the edge in a even or odd front. He can do it all, I think. And I think that's the kind of a double dip that wouldn't have mind the Saints doing, grabbing a quick edge and grabbing a big body for the defensive line. And Tampa does it. I gotta say, it's exactly something I've done before. Grabbing David Walker late in the fourth round, I would get him with our pick 131. And then I usually traded down at some point in the draft so I could acquire a fifth round pick because I thought there were some really good players in the fifth round that wouldn't make it to the sixth round. We were lucky Devin Neal made it to us in the sixth round. But yeah, I was eyeballing guys like Jared Ivey or Elijah Roberts in the fifth round. And yeah, that's what Tampa does. Their last pick 235 in the seventh round, they grabbed wide receiver Tez Johnson, the smallest guy in football. He's only like 165 pounds. He's quick, he gets open fast. Everybody worries about his ability to stay healthy at his size in a big man's league. So, does Tez Johnson turn into some spectacular find in the seventh round? This guy had day two buzz for a while. It's his size that made him fall. And yeah, Tampa gets him late in the third round, late in the seventh round. I'm not sure if Tez Johnson can make it. I think that he'll be exciting in preseason, but I'm just afraid that he's just not big enough. So maybe he'll prove me wrong. But that is the draft class for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we're going to have to worry about these guys. So we got to find a way to cover Igbuka. And they have a couple of secondary pieces we have to watch out. Don't let Benjamin Morrison make a name for himself in this league playing us twice a year. And we're going to have to protect our quarterback from David Walker getting to him. And yeah, my eyes are going to be on David Walker and Elijah Roberts. I mock those guys to the Saints constantly. I did that fourth round Walker and fifth round Roberts constantly when I was mocking picks to the Saints because I thought it was a nice little combo. Tampa gets it, and I'm going to have to sit here and hope they are no good, and at the same time realize, yeah, I would have done the same thing if I was in their shoes. So, all right, let's go to the last one, the Carolina Panthers. Golly, every year it's the same thing with this team. They just have these draft classes that I love. Last year, they grabbed, what was his name? Brooks, Jonathan Brooks. And despite okay, so he was injured a lot, and when healthy, I thought he was the best running back in college coming out. So when Carolina grabbed him, I thought, okay, you got a good running back. The thing is, he got hurt, and he never really played much last year at all, and that's the risk. If Brooks stays healthy, then we'll all get to see how good of a running back he is. And yeah, I liked him. I probably wouldn't have drafted him in the first or second round. I just thought he was the best running back coming out. You have that injury issue. So this year, with the eighth overall pick, one pick before the Saints pick, they go ahead and grab wide receiver Tetaroa McMillan. It's kind of a surprise to some people. I'd seen him mocked to the Panthers before. And he was definitely on the very short list of who to grab at pick 9 for the Saints. We didn't have the option. Carolina grabs him. And so, for all you Saints fans that thought McMillan was going to be a great player and the Saints should grab him with pick 9, now you got to hope he's a bad player and he doesn't show up and make life hell for the Saints. Yeah, they grabbed a big wide receiver last year that I liked in the mid rounds, and now I'm hoping he's no good either. Well, they've got they've got a couple of big bodies at wide receiver now. And then they double dip in a way at edge and defensive end, just like Tampa did, and just like, well, Atlanta double dipped on pure edge. And the Saints, we could have, we got Broughton who can play in, but I look at it as a defensive tackle, and then we end up getting the seventh round pick Diggs, which is a true edge. In this case, Carolina would pick 51 in the second round, grabs Nick Scorton, who I had a first round grade on, and I'm thinking, man, you got a steal here. This is the bottom half of the middle of the second round. You grab Nick Scorton, okay. Big body defensive end. He might be able to give you some snaps inside. He has just enough athleticism where you can play him on the edge. But then they go true edge in the third round with pick 77. Edge rusher Princely Uman out of Ole Miss. Now, Uman was on my short list of who to grab in the second round at pick 40 for the Saints. He was at the bottom of that list, but he was one of the. I had about 13 players written down when the round started, second round started, and yeah, I would not have been disappointed had the Saints grabbed Uman with pick 40. It's amazing. The Panthers grab him in the third round after we had a pick 71, and we grabbed Danny Stutzman. Everyone loves linebacker Danny Stutzman, and I do too. But man, does Carolina have to be the team to grab Nick Scorton and Princely Umanmielen? I don't know what's a better combo, David Walker and Elijah Roberts, or Nick Scorton and Princely Umanmielen. Yeah, I'm leaning towards Scorton and Umanmielen. And here are the Panthers giving it to me again. They have two fourth round picks. With pick 114, they grab the running back Trevor Etienne, and I was never really a fan of Etienne. I've drafted him for the Saints once in the couple of hundred mocks I did because he fell to the third day, day three. Carolina grabs him in round four, and with their second fourth round pick 122, they grab safety Lathan Ransom out of Ohio State. And Lathan Ransom's a guy I mocked to the Saints a ton in day three. If I didn't address safety in day one or day two, I usually never did in day one. Usually in the third round, I would grab a safety. But if I didn't, and I could grab Lathan Ransom in the fourth round, I felt pretty good. Ransom's a guy that's going to play around the line of scrimmage. And we'll see what they have in the player that I liked. They had two fifth round picks, and both of them were, once again, players I mocked to the Saints constantly. So in reality, the Saints get Vernon Broughton in the third round. And I'm thinking that's a bit of a reach. I had Broughton as more of a fourth round to fifth round pick, along with defensive tackle Cam Jackson out of Florida, who the Panthers took in round five. Cam Jackson's more of that you're in your head nose tackle type, but in my opinion, presents the same skill sets almost exactly as Vernon Broughton, a guy that is good against the run. He has really long arms, and you feel like he's going to fit into the league well. He'll be able to dictate the line of scrimmage and be effective as a run stopper, but needs to work on the pass rush. Vernon Broughton might be a touch better than Jackson at pass rush, but that's your only difference. I don't think it's a 2 round difference for sure. But yeah, instead of getting Vernon Broughton with pick, what was it, 71? Instead of getting Vernon Broughton there, I would have been much happier with Princely Uman and then grabbing Cam Jackson later on to fill that need. That was my mentality, and it looks like that's the Panthers' mentality. The way the board fell for them, they get Jackson at 140, and then later on in the fifth round, pick 163, they grab tight end Mitchell Evans out of Notre Dame. Man, Mitchell Evans is one of those guys. He can catch, he can block, all around tight end. I just feel like he makes a transition into the league kind of seamlessly. He's probably not going to be a starter. He's probably not going to be this great player, but I think he's a functional tight end. Unlike the guy we got in the seventh round, who we're kind of hoping, you know, learns a whole bunch about run blocking and receiving before he can turn a corner. I think Mitchell Evans was one of those guys that went at tight end right before we grabbed ours. That was a much better prospect. So a much safer prospect. And yeah, a guy that I mocked to the Saints constantly. If I didn't get Tyler Warren in the first round, if I didn't grab an experimental tight end later on, this was one of the guys I focused on later on. And of course, the Panthers grab him. And then with their last pick, 208 in the sixth round, they grab wide receiver Jimmy Horn Jr. out of Colorado. Size profile doesn't match what we need at all, but he was one of the seventh round wide receivers that I thought you take a chance on. Get him in your camp because Horn to me looks like he could be a really good player despite his limitations at size. I think he's an all around really good player. I don't know if he's going to produce on special teams or not, but yeah, if you didn't grab a wide receiver in the draft, Horn was one of those guys I was focusing on in the seventh round. Carolina gets him in the sixth. And overall, Carolina's draft class is my favorite of the three from our division. So our draft class is fine. And now you know our rival teams' draft classes and what we have to worry about. And really, what we have to worry about is our offensive line, especially our offensive tackles, producing very well because Atlanta didn't have a pass rush before, but they do now with Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. You're not quite sure what Tampa Bay was coming with at pass rush before. Now they got David Walker and Elijah Roberts. And Carolina, oh, they were lacking. They had lost Burns and wasn't sure what kind of pass rush they could muster up anymore. Now they're coming at you with Nick Scorton and Princely Umanmielen. So my biggest takeaway from looking at our divisional rivals' draft classes is that they're going to try to rush the passer and they're going to come after our tackles. And whether we start Fuanga and Penning or Banks and Fuanga, they're going to have this new talent to deal with. All right, that's my video. Thanks for tuning in. Like the video, leave a comment. I respond to all the comments if you're asking me a question. And subscribe to the channel, and you'll get all the Saints content that I provide. Did a video last week breaking down the entire roster. Now we're looking at the NFC South foes draft classes. And next week we'll find something else to get into. I promise. I love the Saints as much as you do, and I'm going to talk about them, and you let me know what you think. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?